I met her on a snowy night in Wyoming when she nearly collapsed by the road, frozen and trembling like a lost bird. She was a chubby foreign woman, quiet and withdrawn, always pulling her sleeves down as if she wanted to hide her whole past beneath the old fabric. When she got hurt on my ranch, I only meant to help bandage the cut. But she suddenly panicked and begged, "Please don't." I gently lifted her sleeve, and when I saw the scar beneath it, my heart almost stopped. My name is Eli Thornton. I'm 46 years old and I own a small ranch called Thornton Creek, 10 miles west of the town of Stillwater, Wyoming. Folks around here call me a quiet man. They're not wrong. After my wife Ruth died from a long illness, I stopped liking crowds. I live with my cattle, my horses, the old wooden fences, long winters, and a handful of loyal hired hands. Every day is the same. Up before dawn, check the barns, mend fences, write in the ledger, then sit by the wood stove listening to the wind sweep across the prairie grass. I thought my life would just keep drifting along like that, until the night she ran into my yard. Her name was Hannah Winslow. She was a foreign woman, Korean by birth, around 30 years old. She had a full figure, a round face, and dark eyes that always looked down before they dared to meet anyone's gaze. She had come to Stillwater a few months earlier and found work at Pratt's General Store. The townspeople weren't kind to her. They mocked her weight, her accent, the fact that she had no family, no husband, and no tidy story they could judge. I had seen her once before in the store. She was reaching for a sack of flour on a high shelf and couldn't quite get it. I stepped over and lifted it down for her. My arm only brushed the air near her, but she flinched back as if I were about to strike her. I remember that look. It wasn't the look of a shy woman. It was the look of someone who had been hurt so badly that her body had learned to be afraid before her mind could even catch up. Then the blizzard came. I found her beside the road, nearly frozen. Her little car flipped into the snow-filled ditch. I brought her back to the ranch, laid her by the fire, boiled water, wrapped her in blankets. She ran a fever for 2 days. In her delirium, she kept whispering broken phrases. "Don't. Please, not again." I didn't ask questions. Some pains can't be pulled out like thorns from skin. You have to let the person who carries them speak when they're ready. After the storm passed, she tried to return to town. But a few weeks later, she came back to the ranch. This time, she wasn't lost. She had lost her job. They accused her of stealing a small piece of jewelry from the store. I looked into her eyes when she told me. I knew she hadn't done it. I didn't need proof. Some people tell the truth with their whole body. She stood in my yard trembling and asked if there was any work for her. I gave her the small wooden cabin beside the cottonwood grove. She helped with the ledgers, mended saddles, patched coats, cooked, and tended the chickens. She worked quietly, without complaint, without demands. On the ranch, she always wore long-sleeved shirts, even when the sun was hot. The sleeves were pulled down to her wrists and buttoned tight. I never asked, but I noticed. One night at the end of winter, a pack of wolves came too close to the sheep pen. I ran out with my rifle. Hannah followed with a lantern, her coat not even fully buttoned. We didn't fight anyone. There was no violence. It was just chaos. Frightened sheep, barking dogs, cold wind, the lantern swinging wildly. Hannah helped me herd the sheep back into the pen. She moved fast and calm, steadier than many men I had hired. But when she pulled the gate shut, her sleeve caught on a broken wooden rail. The fabric tore open. Blood soaked through the cloth. I ran to her. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," she said quickly. "It needs bandaging." "No need." "Hannah." My voice dropped. Not angry, just firm. "Give me your arm." She stepped back. "Please don't. Anymore." I froze. "Don't what?" She clutched her arm to her chest, her face pale. "Don't pull my sleeve up, please. I can bandage it myself." I looked at the blood spreading across the fabric. "The cut is deep. If it isn't cleaned, it will get infected." She shook her head. Tears were already rising in her eyes. "Please don't look." That sentence stopped me cold. Outside, the wind moaned through the barn roof. The sheep were quiet again. The night had gone still except for the sound of her ragged breathing. I set the first aid box down on an old wooden crate. "Hannah, I won't force you, but if you allow me, I'll only pull the sleeve up far enough to clean the wound. I won't ask questions. I won't judge. I'll only help." She looked at me as if she were standing between two fears, the fear of pain and the fear of being seen. Finally, her hand trembled as she held it out. I took her wrist very gently, the way you might hold something more fragile than glass. When I slowly rolled her sleeve up, I saw the fresh cut first. But just above it, on the older skin, there was a long scar that had healed years ago. It wasn't an ordinary wound. It looked like an old burn, twisted and deep. The kind of scar no one gives themselves. My heart seemed to stop. Hannah tried to pull her arm back by instinct, but I held it lightly. She spoke through a choked sob. Now you've seen. I didn't know what to say right away. I only knew there was a cold anger rising inside my chest. Not at her. Never at her. I looked into her eyes and said, Hana, the one who should be ashamed is not you. Her tears fell. I lowered my voice. I'm going to clean the cut now. I'm going to touch your arm. If you want me to stop, just say stop. She looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded. That night, in the flickering light of the lantern inside the horse barn, I bandaged her arm. She cried without making a sound. I didn't tell her to stop crying. I didn't say everything would be all right. Some words are too easy to say and too hard to believe. I just sat there, holding her hand very gently. And inside me, a silent promise took shape. Whatever her past was, from now on this ranch, no one would be allowed to make her afraid again. Thornton Creek Ranch lies 10 miles west of the little town of Stillwater, Wyoming. It is not one of those grand ranches you see in movies, no 1,000-head herds or white-painted barns shining under the sun. It is a working place. One main house built by my grandfather, a horse barn that leans a little to the left after too many hard winter hours, a hay shed, a stretch of open pasture, and a narrow creek that cuts through the valley like a silver thread. The land is enough to keep us alive, nothing more. I inherited it from my father, and my life has been tied to this soil since I was a boy. I know every fence post, every dip in the ground where the snow drifts deep in January, every place the cattle like to hide when the wind turns mean. I once had a wife. Her name was Ruth. Ruth never liked my silence, but she knew how to soften it. She talked enough for both of us, laughed loud, made coffee too weak, and planted flowers along the fence even though the cows trampled them every spring. When she died from a long fever, the main house stopped feeling like a home. It became only a place to sleep, to eat, and to wait out the storms. I never remarried. I never looked for anyone new. I told myself I did not want another woman walking into the rooms where Ruth once laughed, and then walking out again. My oldest hired hand, Sam Carter, once told me, Eli, a man who lives too long with the past starts talking to the dead more than the living. I told him to shut up, but he was right. Hannah Winslow came to Stillwater like a shadow. No one knew where she came from. She said she had lived in Colorado once, had a husband who passed, then drifted from place to place looking for work. The people in town did not like stories with missing pieces. They wanted every detail so they could decide whether to pity her or look down on her. Hannah never gave them that chance. She worked at Pratt's General Store, head down, measuring cloth, bagging sugar, keeping the ledger. She said, "Yes, ma'am, thank you, and I'm sorry," even when someone else was clearly in the wrong. Her full figure made it easy for people to mock her, and her accent made them treat her like an outsider. Her silence gave them room to invent stories about her. In Stillwater, if a woman had no man standing beside her, she became someone else's story to tell. After the night I bandaged her arm in the horse barn, things did not change overnight. Hannah remained careful to the point of pain. She asked permission before using the stove. She asked before pouring herself coffee. She asked before hanging her coat near the wood stove. Once I saw her stand outside the main house door for nearly 10 minutes, just to ask if I wanted her to update the old debt ledger. I finally said, "Hannah, you don't need to ask permission to do the job I hired you for." She looked at the floor. "I just don't want to be a bother. Out here, the biggest bother is the rooster crowing at 3 in the morning. You're nowhere near that level yet." She lifted her head, a little startled. Then the corner of her mouth twitched. That was the first time I saw her smile. She was better at the work than I expected. My ledgers had always been a mess, receipts stuffed in pockets, numbers half forgotten. She sat at the kitchen table for 3 full days, sorting every slip of paper, separating old debts, feed costs, vet bills, and wages. On the 4th day, she handed me a new ledger, neat and clear. "You're losing money on hay transport," she said quietly. I stared at the page. "I thought it was because of the hard winter." "It is, but the man who hauls for you charges you more than he charges anyone else." Sam, leaning in the doorway, gave a low chuckle. "I told the boy that 10 times. I looked at the numbers, then at Hannah. "You're sure?" She nodded. "If you change suppliers, next season you save almost $18. $18 is not nothing on a small ranch." From that day on, I stopped seeing her as someone who needed help. I started seeing her as someone who belonged here. Still, Hannah kept her distance. She would not sit at the table for meals unless Sam was there. She never turned her back to a door. She did not like sudden footsteps behind her. If anyone touched her without warning, she flinched like she had been burned. I never asked about the scar. After that night in the barn, I changed her bandage twice more. Each time I asked the same thing, "May I touch your arm?" Each time she looked at me for a long moment, then gave a small nod. On the 3rd time she whispered, "You don't ask." "About what?" The scar. I answered simply, when you want to tell me, you will. She looked down at her hands. And if I never want to? Then I still won't ask. She turned her face away quickly, but I saw her eyes were wet. In the weeks that followed, the ranch slowly took on a different rhythm. Hannah hung clean towels near the stove. She placed a jar of wildflowers on the windowsill. She straightened the medicine cabinet. She showed Sam a better way to keep track of expenses instead of stuffing receipts in his coat pocket and forgetting them. Sam liked her, he said. That woman makes this house feel less like a barn. I didn't answer. But that night, when I saw the soft yellow light glowing from the little cabin beside the cottonwoods, I realized I had grown used to it. Used to the point that if one day that light went out, the whole yard would feel colder. That scared me, because I had already lost one woman who once made this house warm. I wasn't sure I had the strength to lose another. The rumors started at Pratt's general store. Maggie Pratt, the owner's wife, had a voice made for judgment. She never forgave Hannah for not crumbling after being falsely accused of theft, and she certainly never forgave me for giving Hannah a place to stay. In the aisles between the sacks of flour and tins of beans, Maggie's words spread like spilled molasses. Slow, sticky, impossible to clean up. At church on Sunday, the whispers were louder than the hymns. Mr. Thornton brought that woman to his ranch. What for? She has no Pam Louis, no one to vouch for her. Women like that always have something to hide. Hannah heard every word. I knew because after every trip into town, she came back quieter than when she left. She would unload the supplies without a sound, her shoulders a little more rounded, her eyes fixed on the ground. One late afternoon, she returned from Stillwater carrying bolts of cloth, a bag of salt, and a handful of mail. She set everything on the kitchen table with careful hands, but I saw her fingers trembling. I asked gently, "Something happened in town?" "Nothing," she answered too quickly. "Hannah." She stood still for a long moment, then spoke so softly I almost missed it. "They say I'm using you." I stayed quiet. She continued, her voice tight. "They say a woman like me, if a decent man gives her shelter, sooner or later she'll ruin his name." I set my coffee cup down. "My name wasn't worth much before you came." She looked at me then, eyes searching. "I'm serious, Eli." "So am I." She shook her head, a mix of exhaustion and pain crossing her face. "You don't understand. I've lived under rumors before. It's not just words. They can take your job, your home, your friends, even your name." That last part caught my attention. "Even your name?" Hannah froze, realizing she had said too much. She turned away. "I should get back to the cabin." I didn't stop her. But that night I couldn't sleep. I finally understood that Hannah wasn't just running from one town. She was running from an old name, an old life, maybe an old man. And the scar on her arm was the only piece of that past still clinging to her, no matter how tightly she buttoned her sleeves. A few days later, I taught her how to shoot. Not because I wanted to make her tough. I just didn't want her living in Wyoming without knowing how to protect herself. She held the rifle like it might bite her. Shoulders locked, breath short. I stood a respectful distance away. "Breathe slow." "I am breathing." "No, you're fighting the gun like it's about to attack you." She gave a small, frustrated huff. "You're awfully good at talking to women." I almost smiled. "I'm good at talking to horses. Women. I'm still learning." That time she laughed. A real, short laugh that lit up for half a second before disappearing again. I pointed at a tin can on the fence rail. "Aim. Breathe in. Breathe out halfway. Hold. Squeeze the trigger. Don't jerk." Her first shot missed. Second shot missed. Third shot clipped the edge of the can. It spun once and fell to the dirt. She stared at it like she couldn't believe her eyes. I said quietly, "See that? I hit it? You hit it." A tiny surprised smile touched her lips, the kind of smile that looked like it hadn't been allowed out in years. After that shooting lesson, Hannah started sleeping better. She kept the rifle near her cabin door, but I knew the gun wasn't the only thing that brought her peace. For the first time, she had the right to protect herself, instead of only hiding and hoping. Yet the closer she got to me, the more afraid she became. One evening, I carried an armload of firewood to her cabin. She was sitting on the porch mending one of Sam's shirts under the lantern light. I set the wood down. She opened the door. "You don't have to do that." "I know." "Then why do you?" "Because it's cold." She looked at the pile of wood, then at me. "Eli, your kindness scares me." The words stopped me where I stood. "Why?" "Because in the past, kindness always came with a price. Someone was kind, then told me I owed them. Someone helped me, then used it to keep me quiet. Someone said they wanted to protect me, then made me belong to them. I listened to every word like stones dropping down a deep well. I answered carefully, I don't want to own you. You say that now. Yes, I say that now, and tomorrow I'll try to live up to it. She looked at me for a long time. I added, if one day I make you feel pressured, tell me. If you want me to leave, I'll go. If you want the door closed, I'll stand outside. She didn't answer right away, but the cabin door stayed open a little longer that night. She stood there in the yellow lantern glow, sleeves still buttoned to her wrists, face tired but a fraction less guarded. Eli. Yeah? Thank you for asking before you touch me. I nodded. You deserve to be asked. She looked at the ground. Not everyone thinks that. I replied simply, then they're wrong. From that evening on, whatever was growing between us was no longer just boss and hired help. It wasn't full-blown love yet, but it was something closer to trust. She began telling me small things, the soup her mother used to make, the sound of her father's voice reading evening prayers, the city she lived in before Wyoming. She still hadn't spoken about the scar. I still didn't ask. But both of us knew one day her past would come looking, because things buried that deep rarely stay quiet forever. Spring came to Stillwater with the railroad. One morning in late March, the town square filled with strangers in pressed suits and shiny boots. They spoke of new tracks, a new depot, jobs, money, progress. The man at the center of it all was Garrett Sloan, tall, silver-haired, smiling like he already owned the land he stood on. When Sam mentioned the name at breakfast, Hannah dropped her teacup. It shattered on the wooden floor with a sound that seemed louder than it should have been. She stared at the broken pieces, her face the color of old paper. I didn't ask questions right then. I just knelt down and helped her pick up the shards. That night she came to the main house after dark. She stood in the doorway of the kitchen with a small bag in her hands, eyes wide and frightened. I have to leave, Eli. Tonight. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I set the ledger down slowly. Why? Garrett Sloan is here. He's the one who took everything from me in Colorado. If he finds out I'm here, he'll come for you too. He'll take the ranch. He'll ruin you the way he ruined me. She was already turning toward the door. I stood up. Hannah. She stopped but didn't turn around. This is your home now, I said. My voice was quiet, but it filled the room. Not because I gave it to you, because you helped make it one again. You don't have to run anymore. She spun back, tears already falling. You don't understand what he's capable of. He destroys people who stand in his way. I won't let him destroy you because of me. I took one step closer, careful to keep distance. Then we won't let him. Not by running, by standing. She looked at me like I had spoken in a language she no longer believed existed. For 3 days we worked in secret. Hannah wrote her statement with her real name, Hannah Miller, thus, at the top. She told the truth about the land in Colorado, the forged papers, the fire, the scar. Her hand shook the whole time, but she didn't stop. I sat beside her, not speaking, only refilling her coffee and making sure the lantern stayed bright. Sam rode to neighboring ranches and came back with letters from 3 other families Sloan had cheated. Hattie Brewster at the boarding house quietly copied old deeds. Even old Judge Pierce agreed to look at the papers in private. The town meeting was called for the last Saturday in April. The hall was packed. Sloan stood at the front, smiling that same confident smile, promising jobs and wealth. People were nodding. Money has a way of making folks forget their doubts. Then Hannah stood up. I walked beside her to the front, but I didn't speak for her. This was hers. She pulled up her left sleeve in front of everyone. The long scar caught the lantern light. The room went dead silent. My name is Hannah Miller, she said, voice trembling but clear. 6 years ago, Garrett Sloan wanted the water rights on my husband's land in Colorado. When my husband refused to sell, Sloan burned our house. My husband died in that fire. I survived with this. She touched the scar. He forced me to sign away the land. He told me if I ever spoke, he would make sure no one believed me. I ran. I changed my name. I came here thinking I could disappear. She looked straight at Sloan. But I'm done disappearing. Sloan's smile faltered for the first time. He tried to laugh it off. This woman is unstable. She was accused of theft right here in town. Hannah cut him off, calm now. I was accused because I refused to be quiet. I have the papers. I have the letters from other families you cheated. And I have the truth. Judge Pierce stood. I've reviewed the documents. There is enough here to open a formal investigation into Mr. Sloan's land dealings across the territory. Hattie Brewster stood too. I have signed statements from 3 other families. Sam stepped forward from the back. And I'll swear that Sloane's men were measuring on Thornton Creek land without permission. The room shifted. People who had been nodding at Sloane's promises were now looking at him differently. Sloane tried one last time, voice tight. You have no proof that will hold in court. Hannah answered softly, but every word carried. I don't need to win in court today. I only need to stop running, and I'm not running anymore. She stepped down from the front. The hall was completely quiet except for the sound of her boots on the wooden floor. Outside, the spring wind was cool. Hannah's legs gave out the moment we reached the wagon. She grabbed the side and I steadied her without pulling her close. I did it, she whispered. You did, I said. She looked up at me, eyes shining with something I had never seen in her before, Nanos. Not just relief, but pride. I didn't run. No, I said. You didn't. That night, back at the ranch, she sat on the porch steps with her sleeves rolled up to her elbows. The scar was visible under the lantern light, but she didn't try to hide it. I sat beside her, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. Eli, she said after a long silence. Yeah? Thank you for not letting me run. I looked at the dark prairie stretching out under the stars. Thank you for staying. Neither of us said anything more. We didn't need to. For the first time since I had known her, Hannah Winslow, Hannah Miller, sat with her arms bare in the open air, no longer afraid of what someone might see. And I sat beside her, knowing that whatever came next, we would face it together. Spring turned into summer, and summer into the first cool nights of fall. Things did not change overnight. The world does not work that way. Garrett Sloane did not vanish in a puff of smoke the day after the town meeting. Investigations take time, papers pile up, and powerful men do not let go of land without a fight. But the fight had begun, and for the first time in years, Hannah was not the one running from it. Sloane left Stillwater on a gray morning in early June. No one threw rocks, no one cheered. He simply climbed into his polished carriage and drove away, the dust rising behind him like a question no one cared to answer anymore. A few weeks later, Judge Pierce quietly told me the territorial authorities had opened a full inquiry. More families were coming forward. The papers were real this time. Maggie Pratt came to the ranch one warm afternoon. She stood at the edge of the porch, twisting her apron in her hands, eyes fixed somewhere near Hannah's feet instead of her face. I was wrong, she said. Her voice was stiff, but it was honest. About the brooch. I knew you didn't take it. I let people talk. I'm sorry. Hannah stood very still for a long moment. I stayed a few steps back, close enough if she needed me, far enough to let her speak for herself. Hannah finally answered, soft but steady. I accept your apology, but I won't be coming back to work at the store. Maggie's face flushed red. She nodded once hard, then turned and walked back down the path toward town. When she was gone, Hannah turned to me. The wind lifted a strand of her dark hair. Before I would have apologized right back to her, she said quietly, even when I did nothing wrong. I leaned against the porch post. And now? She looked at the empty road where Maggie had disappeared. Now I know not every burden is mine to carry. From that day on, something in Hannah loosened. She no longer pulled her sleeves down to her wrists every single morning. Some days she still wore long sleeves out of habit. Other days she rolled them up past her elbows while kneading bread dough or weeding the garden. The scar was there, long, twisted, impossible to miss in the sunlight, but she no longer tried to hide it like a crime. One afternoon, a little girl from a neighboring ranch came with her mother to buy eggs. The child noticed the scar and asked, wide-eyed, Does your arm hurt, Miss Hannah? Her mother tried to shush her, embarrassed. Hannah only smiled, a real, gentle smile, and crouched down so she was eye level with the girl. It used to hurt a lot, she said, but it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. It's just a mark that says I survived something hard. The little girl nodded solemnly, the way children do when they understand more than adults give them credit for. I have a scar on my knee from falling off the pony, she offered. Hannah's smile widened. Then we both have proof that we fell down and got back up. I watched from the doorway, chest tight with something I couldn't name. That was the moment I realized Hannah wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. I changed too, in small, quiet ways. One evening, I took the small cloth doll Ruth had kept since she was a girl out of the bottom drawer where I had hidden it for years. I had been afraid to look at it, afraid the ache would swallow me whole. I set it on the mantel beside the jar of wildflowers Hannah kept filled. Hannah saw it, dusted it gently with her sleeve, and placed it next to a sprig of sage without asking a single question. Later that night, she said softly, She must have loved this doll very much. Ruth didn't play with dolls, I answered. She kept it because it was hers as a child. She said it reminded her where she came from. Hannah looked at me for a long time. You miss her? Every day. Do you feel guilty for being happy again? The question hit straight and clean. I sat down heavy in the chair by the stove. Yeah, I do. She sat across from me. I used to think the same thing, that if I laughed, I was betraying the people I lost. Then I realized the dead don't need us to live like graves. I didn't cry often in front of people, but that night I did. Hannah didn't try to comfort me with words. She simply sat beside me the same way I had once sat beside her. Close, steady, present. Late in the fall, on a clear golden afternoon, I took her up the hill behind the house where two small wooden crosses stood in the grass. One for Ruth. One for Ruth's little sister who had died young and whom Ruth had loved like her own child. I had not brought anyone there in years. Hannah stood quietly, hands folded in front of her. I wanted you to meet them, I said. She looked at me, eyes soft. Thank you. The wind moved through the yellow grass. Down in the valley, Sam was fixing fence. Smoke rose thin and straight from the chimney of the main house. I stood in front of Ruth's cross and spoke the words I had carried for a long time. I thought my life ended when you left, but someone walked in. She didn't take your place. She just opened another room in my heart that I thought was locked forever. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. I turned to her. Hannah Miller. She looked at me. No one had spoken her real name without causing her pain in a very long time. I said, will you stay on this ranch with me? Not as hired help, not as someone who needs protecting, but as the woman I want to eat breakfast with, keep ledgers with, face storms with, and grow old with. She looked at me for a long, quiet moment. Are you asking me to marry you? I gave a small, awkward smile. I think I am, even if I'm doing it kind of badly. She laughed through her tears, that short, bright laugh I had come to love. Very badly. But honest. She nodded. Then my answer is honest too. Yes. We did not have a big wedding, just Sam, Hattie Brewster, Judge Pierce, and a few true friends. Hannah wore a simple cream dress she had sewn herself from old fabric. She did not pull her sleeves down. The scar showed when she took my hand to say her vows. No one stared at it for long. No one dared to whisper. And if anyone looked, I believe they saw what I saw. A woman who had walked through fire and still chose to stand here, still chose to love, still chose to begin again. After the quiet ceremony, Hannah placed her hand over her scar and whispered to me, I used to think this was the mark of the man who tried to destroy me. And now? Now I think it's the mark that he failed. I kissed the back of her hand, but not the scar like some grand gesture, but the hand that had worked, trembled, held a rifle, written truth, and slowly mended the broken pieces of my home. Years later, people in Stillwater no longer called her the strange foreign woman who was too heavy and too quiet. They called her Mrs. Thornton, the best bookkeeper in the county, the woman whose honey cakes were requested at every church supper, the woman who taught young girls that no one had the right to use rumors to decide their worth, the woman who always said, some wounds heal on the skin long before they heal in the heart, but the heart learns too. And every morning, when the first light touches the cottonwoods, Hannah opens the door of the main house, sleeves rolled up, and calls me in for breakfast. I walk across the yard knowing she has finally come home, and so have I.